Hi everyone, and welcome to the Say As It Is with Pete podcast series. I'm Pete, your host, and each week I will bring you some frank and honest conversations covering various topics from learning and development, apprenticeships, funding, HR, strengths, recruitment, ESG, well-being, ED&I, employability, and much, much more. So let's get this week's episode underway and say as it is. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Say As It Is with Pete, and I am your host as always, Pete. Now, on this episode, I've never shied away from tough topics, and today is no different. We're going to have a chat along with an honest and frank conversation about weaknesses. Yes, you heard me right. Those do not bring it up at the dinner table kind of topics, but you know what they say. Every weakness has its charm. Or was it cloud has a silver lining? Well, both apply today. So brace yourselves as we explore how to turn weaknesses into strengths with a bit of help from our trusty tool, StrengthScope. Now buckle up and let's dive in. So, let's look about understanding our weaknesses. Now, weaknesses, we'll have them, right? From my inability to resist a good biscuit or a piece of chocolate or a McDonald's, to the more serious ones like dealing with criticism. But what if I told you these aren't just hiccups on your journey to greatness, but the scenic route itself? That's right. Every weakness has an opportunity, or I should say, every weakness is an opportunity in disguise. But don't just take it from me. Let's turn to the world of business. So did you know that Richard Branson, the poster child of British entrepreneurial success, struggled with dyslexia? But instead of viewing it as a weakness, he used it as a strength to think creativity, to think creatively, got to read my writing, and intuitively, leading him to create the Virgin Empire. Just goes to show, doesn't it? He used that weakness of his, which was his dyslexia, and he created that empire. And that empire has gone from Virgin Cruise Liners to Virgin Health Clubs to Virgin Hotels to Virgin Airlines to Virgin Galaxia, to various other things. And also, in a previous podcast, I openly stated I have dyslexia and I'm very creative, and I think some of you have seen that, and creativity is in one of my strengths, which is amazing. But also Whoopi Goldberg, one of my favourite actresses, has dyslexia, but they never let them hold it back. Even Einstein. There are lots of famous actors, actresses, singers, sports players, and many other people that have dyslexia that has never let it hold them back as a weakness. So let's have an introduction to StrengthScope. Now, as we dive into the world of StrengthScope, let's get some introductions out of the way. In the red corner, we have the controversial strengths assessment, focused on what's wrong with us. But in the blue corner, or I like to call it the violet or purple corner, we have StrengthScope, our underdog, which spotlights what's right with us and how we can do more of it. It's like choosing between your usual boring tea or an exciting cup of spicy chai or a pumpkin latte. I do like a pumpkin latte. So I think you know which one I'd pick. Now, let's look at our StrengthScope and our weaknesses. Now, don't you fret. This isn't about being Superman or Wonder Woman, and StrengthScope knows that. We're talking about strengths in overdrive here. This is when your strength is like an eager puppy off its leash. Okay, I'm going to leave this blueprint because I can't read my writing. So let me start again. This is when your strength is like an eager puppy off its lead, bounding all over the place and causing more havoc than help. It's about keeping that puppy on the long lead. So this is where it can play and help without tripping anyone up. And is where Strength Scope can be your best mate, guiding you on how to do just that. So I apologize for that blooper, but I'm leaving it in, to be honest. That's what a podcast is about, right? Tongue twisting words and leash and lead. I don't know how I got that mixed up. But anyway, as it's saying, I know myself, and I said this before, enthusiasm is like my puppy. I know if I get too enthusiastic and my strength goes into overdrive, my puppy leaps and bounds around the office and around the project, licking and sniffing and running around and annoying people, and it's not having the effect I wanted it to have. But using Strength Scope as my best mate, it helps me identify the triggers of when I'm potentially going into overdrive, but also it helps me identify what bubbling unders I could dial up, or who else I could lean on by leaning on others' strengths to help me make sure I don't go into overdrive. So you could say Strength Scope is one of my best mates now. So let's look at turning your weaknesses into strengths. So, all right, the moment we've all been waiting for, turning those so-called weaknesses into our very own superpowers. Now, Strength Scope can be the Robin to your Batman, but remember, you've got to do the heavy lifting. It starts with a little self-awareness and a lot of acceptance. So next time your I can't say no trait lands you into another volunteer event, think about it. Maybe your superpower is empathy, and being there for others just needs a bit of managing, right? Well, that's a wrap for our roller coaster ride from weaknesses to strengths. Now remember, it's not about being flawless. It's about using those flaws to add some character, and Strength Scope can be your guide and your compass to this journey. So gang, wear your weaknesses with pride and watch them turn into your strengths. So that's it for today's episode of Say As It Is with Pete. And as always, it's been a pleasure dishing out the reality checks and stirring up some thought-provoking broth. But don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with friends, families, and co-workers. Oh, and keep an eye out for the next episode, as it's going to be a cracker. So until then, this is your host Pete signing off. And remember, stay sassy, stay classy. But hang on, I'm not finished yet. A little bit of a teaser there. And, I am going to tease you, but I'm not finished. When I created this episode, or when I was looking to create this episode, I reached out to a few people within my network, and I got some questions thrown at me around weaknesses and strengths. So I'm going to add this little bit of a bonus segment into this episode, and it's called Listener Questions. So it's where I answer some of your burning questions, and who knows, we might even learn something new together. That's the plan. And remember, there's no such thing as a silly question, just silly people who don't ask questions. So from reaching out to people, I have 2 questions that were sent to me from some people I know that have asked these questions, so I'm going to answer them for you. So here we go. Question 1. So our first question comes from Sally in Shrewsbury. Now, she asks, Pete, how can I identify my overdrive strengths? Well, Sally, it's like identifying if you've put too much salt in your chips. It might have seemed like a good idea at first, but then everyone's reaching for water. When you're getting feedback that your strength is becoming too much or creating issues, it's a strength in overdrive. But don't worry, a little adjustment and seasoning and you'll be cooking up a storm. Now, the second question is from Billy in Brighton, who asks the following question. He wanted to know, is it possible to turn any weakness into a strength? Now, that's a good question, Billy. It reminds me of a quote from Winston Churchill. that said, or Winston Churchill said, kites rise highest against the wind, not with it. So yes, any weakness can be a potential strength if you learn to harness it. So don't fight it. And remember, even if your fear of heights can make you a meticulous planner. Now, thank you to Sally and Billy for your insightful questions and for letting me add those questions in this episode. And remember, we're all in this journey together. So let's keep the conversation going. And I'm happy for people to send me questions on future episodes or current episodes that I've done, and I can answer them. And I'm quite happy to answer them. And there you have it. From understanding weaknesses to strengths, to taking listener questions. Hopefully I've covered it all today on this episode of Say As It Is with Pete. Now, this episode ends the first season of the Say As It Is with Pete podcast series. And I'm trying to keep the episodes to at least 21, 22 episodes per season. And I get to finish season 1 on this episode as we close off strengths and how to use strengths within your day-to-day and career. So season 2 is coming, do not worry, and season 2 is coming on the 7th of August. So do subscribe, share and leave a review if you've enjoyed today's episode. Stay tuned, and remember, don't let your weaknesses get you down. Let them lift you up. Now, this is me now saying to you, own your reality and say as it is. So until next time, goodbye. But it's not a goodbye, because you will get a few more episodes between. There's a few more bonus episodes coming out this week and next. But don't forget, season 2 comes on the 7th of August, and thank you to everyone that has made season 1 very popular and successful. And remember, you can always go back and listen to past episodes and bonus episodes via Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, rss.com, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts from. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on season 2 with even more insightful, thought-provoking, frank and honest conversations on some amazing topics.